two.
So we're here today with Amy Engelhardt, the composer and co-lyricist of the new musical Bastard Jones, which just opened off-Broadway to rave reviews. And we want to talk to Amy about the whole process of bringing a new musical to its world premiere off-Broadway. So Amy, one of the first things I wanted to ask you was, how long has it been since you first came up with the idea to make a musical version of the novel Tom Jones and bring it to off-Broadway? How long has it been since that initial idea till your opening that was just very recently?
It's been exactly 7 years since we started working on it, and obviously there was time off in between for various projects. I would say in total, if you had to condense the actual time spent working on it, maybe 4 years across the 7 years. But you know, we had to take a lot of time off for different things, including the pesky making a living thing.
And when you say we, can you let us know about your collaborator, Mark?
Yes. Mark Aceto is the book writer and co-lyricist, and he pitched the idea to me for making a Tom Jones musical. When I approached him in the spring of 2010, completely out of the blue, to try and make a musical out of his book, which is called How I Paid for College, a novel of sex, friendship, and musical theater, and was a hit, a bestseller in the mid-2000s, and a big hit with the kind of Gleek crowd. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, you can't have it. The book is tied up with the subsidiary rights to the movie, because Columbia Pictures had an option, which it never happened. But he pitched Tom Jones to me. And I hadn't seen the book or read the movie. And so I did that. I both saw the book and read the movie and the BBC miniseries. And I said, yeah, this sounds super.
Cool. And I know it's a rock opera version. Have you contemporized it, or is it still set in the time period of the original novel?
It is still a period piece. It is a period farce with a rock score, rock Broadway score. And the whole point was that we are still dealing with the same issues that Henry Fielding dealt with in the book. And in fact, this book influenced the founders of this country. Thomas Jefferson was a huge fan of it and its principles, because at heart it's about someone who is discriminated against because of how they are born. And sadly, that is an issue today as well. And so when I read it, I saw Tom as an electric guitar in a harpsichord world. And so that's what we went with. So the dialogue is still period and ridiculous because we emphasize those elements of it. Mark and I are both classical theater nuts, as well as musical theater nuts. And the score is pop rock. Since I'm a child of the era of orchestral rock, that's what I hear anyway. And the lyrics ride the line.
Between the two worlds.
Between the two worlds, and the design actually reflects this kind of whimsicality between the two periods as well. So Tom wears jeans and a jean jacket, but it has frills on it, or it has a pattern. He has a shirt underneath that is much more evocative of the 1800s. And Sophia wears these like white jeans with a pattern on them, and a drop shoulder blouse, but a corset, stuff like that.
It sounds like it's a little bit what they call steampunk.
Yes, exactly.
Which is a really fun style.
Yes, completely whimsical, and that's the tone of the entire thing, except when it kind of twists and gets serious.
Well, it certainly does sound like the theme of the book is very resonant today. And as I say, plus ça change, plus la même chose. As much as things change, they stay the same. Yeah. So that makes it very resonant, and sometimes it's a lot easier to portray that kind of a lesson when you separate it from your audience a little bit, rather than putting it right in modern day, because it's easier for us to accept the lesson.
Ding!
Bingo!
Yes, but of course you also make it accessible to them by putting it in a musical vocabulary that they get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and one of the other most famous aspects of the book is its sexuality that for the time period, it was pretty wild. And in many ways, it's still wild today. And from the little bit I read of your fantastic New York Times review, it seems like you have absolutely embraced that part of the novel.
Yeah, well, our whole idea was go big or go home, and we completely embraced it. It is extremely raunchy, ribald, as you might say. It's all done stylized, so that it's not gratuitous, because that's what the show is literally about what happens in other people's beds. That's how a bastard is created, and how one of the lines is life, wouldn't you think life would be better if the keepers of morality kept it to themselves, because they are often exposed as hypocrites. That's relevant.
Well, that doesn't resonate with our world today at all, Amy.
And it's all about how, people are always too fascinated with what other people do in bed, and how that will determine your life. And yes, we have not shied away from it at all. There is action of every kind. And in the choreography as well as the staging. But like I said, there's a goofiness to it, the kind of goofiness you would find in a Restoration comedy. It's not modern day exploitative, it's not that. It's highly stylized. And so people just really respond very well to it. And the theater is actually a 55-seat theater, so it's very intimate. And if you are sitting in the front row, you will get crotches and faces. You just will. And I've told my guests who come there, be prepared. But the whole thing, like I said, is just so, and men and women participate in it. And there's no nudity. So there's that. There's a lot of
nudity. Yeah.
Yes, there is absolutely no nudity. So it's all in the language and in the behavior and how things are staged. But yes, we did not shy away from it.
Now you mentioned the 55-seat theater. That's the Cell Theater. Is that correct? Yeah. And I see that it's on 23rd Street, so it's in Chelsea, which is not the normal purview for an off-Broadway show. It's a little uptown for other off-Broadway venues. How have you found that in terms of finding an audience? Is it well enough known? Are there enough other theaters in that area that that's not a problem?
Irish Rep is about 2 blocks away, which is also a small house. We haven't had a finding audience a problem at all. It's Chelsea between 8th and 9th. And however, we found the audience, but most people who walk in the door haven't been there before. They said,
I've never been to the theater.
No idea what this building was. It's actually a Georgian townhouse. It's gorgeous. And its unusual look is what drew Mark to it. He went to see a production of a musicalized version of Hard Times, which was I'm sorry, I just lost you in the middle of that.
No, we're still here.
All right, my screen just went dim for some reason, and I don't know why. All right, but as long as it's fine with you. Okay, so I'll start that answer over.
We'll just keep going. It's informal. You can just keep chatting.
Okay. So the Cell, it's a four-floor Georgian townhouse, and it has been many things over the course of its lifetime, including a gallery and a bank. And it's not a black box, it's a white box, because it's been a gallery. So you don't have blackouts, you have you don't have whiteouts either, but because they pull the curtain so you can have full theatrical effect. But it's a white room with black curtains, as the 60s songs go, and it has a loft space. It's a rectangular space, and it has a loft. And Mark walked into a production of Hard Times in about 2014, and he looked at the loft space and said, "I want to do Bastard Jones here." Because we need it, because we do have the classic 3 doors for the, it's a farce. So we have the slamming doors. And so the doors were built. That's usually where the production offices are. But we completely reconfigured the space, and the band's behind the doors.
That's fantastic. Well, now that's interesting. You mentioned it's a farce, Amy, and I know I've found in the work that I've done with assisting people with developing new musicals, a farce is a challenge for a musical. specifically because it tends to be so fast-paced that often trying to fit a song in just stops the action dead and kills the forward momentum of the farce. So how have you approached that in your show to keep that frenetic, farcical pace going and yet make room for the songs?
That's a great question. Mark and I are both language nuts. So that's a good start, is that we have a huge facility with language, and we can speak, 18th century parlance, classical theater parlance, as well as contemporary. And so what I did, I tend to be what I write tends to be very up and bouncy and comedic anyway. So following those instincts, I was very careful to write to the timbre and bounce of his language. So we wrote a lot of it sitting side by side, and or in the same room, and our energy kind of fed off of each other, and like I said, we both are known for our comic writing, and very conscious of this and the rhythms of farce and how things should bounce into the song as opposed to stop for the song. There's only one ballad in each act, which is a completely conscious choice. I tend to like things on the bright side anyway. I'm a real tempo soldier in this respect, and then I usually knock it up another 4 ticks or 6 ticks when we actually get to performance, because everything speeds, the energy requires it. So there's not a lot of ballads. A lot of it's funny. We only stop to have a ballad when we're making a point, really. It's not only expositional at times, but there's so much comedy in the lyrics and the characters that. And it has, for comedy to work, as you know, it has to be lit. The room has to be a good temperature, preferably cold, and faster is funnier. And that's one of the reasons farce works, because so much is happening at once. So it's bouncy. It's really, it's more pop-like. My style as a composer, like I said, lends it to that. And if I were to name people who've influenced what I do, Ben Folds is one of them, and everything Ben Folds writes has a bounce to it. And that can lend itself to anything from something that's bouncy and bright in a pop context to something vaudevillian to complete cartoon comic energy. You also have to be very careful when you want the jokes to land, that it can't be too fast. But this is something that, literally hours spent balancing lyrics, tempos, jokes, blah, blah, blah. But the show does not slow down ever. It's like a roller coaster, and the running time is 2 hours without the intermission, and each act is an hour. So that's part of it too, is we kept a very solid eye on the running time, and cut and cut and cut, because I don't even want to go to my own show that's 3 hours long, much less a comedy that's 3 hours long. Hit it and quit it,
Great. Another challenge that I can see in terms of that delicate balance and making it all work is I see that Mark actually, as well as being your collaborator, also directed, and I can see that there are big pluses and also some minuses in that.
Yes.
Obviously, he knows he's going to know the work and what you guys are trying to accomplish, and that's a great thing for a director, to come in really knowing what he wants to do. But you're also trying to mount a brand new show, so he's going to be pulled by having to do revisions and yet also be the director. So how did you handle all of that?
Well, yes, when Mark said to me, I want to direct it, I thought of all of that, and I said, yes, of course you should, because we've actually had 2 other directors on the project who didn't see what we saw. And it's such a hybrid animal, this particular show, and the vision is so specific, and Mark and I are so united in it, that I thought, well, who better to show it at the world what it is, which was the purpose of this production. It's not something that you can necessarily read and get. I mean, because you open the script and it says 1742, Somersetshire, England. And, to some people that's like, oh, Jesus Christ, and then just glaze over. And then they listen to the demos and you can't make hide or hair of it, because you can't represent the physical comedy. You can't represent the energy of it. Comedy's a hard read anyway. So I said yes, yes, yes. And there's a little bit of a selfish yes to that as well, because Mark and I have an extremely porous partnership, in which it's not uncommon for me to just say a line or something, and then it's in the script, or for him to suggest something and then I'm like, that's a good way to go. So I knew that I would of course have his ear the entire time if he directed, and and that he'd want that. So he had a support system in me. And I also said to him, listen, I don't want you to muck up your amazing writing with too much crap, with too much staging. And I'm going to be on you about that too, if I think you're over directing. So we watch out for each other in a big way. And there were other eyes in the room, like Joe Barrows, who we discussed, a mutual friend.
Your choreographer from the New York Theater Barn. Right?
Yes, he's amazing. And so we were all, it was a very team approach and very supportive of the choices. And I actually can't imagine other people having presented it, because it literally is, it's a small stage. It's literally the balsamic reduction version of exactly what we saw, exactly what we heard. So so I'm thrilled with it, actually. And if we move forward, I know that it could go either way with him at the helm or not. Obviously, I'd love to, because it's been a success, and he's gotten raves for his direction, because you really brought out all the zaniness in it, and he, like I said, go big or go home. He's like, why not? So we're really happy with it.
That's great. Now, you mentioned the purpose of this particular production, and I'd like for you to talk a little bit, Amy, because I know I was on your mailing list, so I was privy to some of the work that you guys did to try and make this happen from the funding side, and I think you have an interesting model and an interesting approach that made this happen. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we had an approach that I later called the waterfall of win, because of the and heading for the finish line now, because of the content of the show and the theme of the show, basically young people who are kicked out of their homes because of how they were born. Those are the consequences of their action. We thought it would be good to tie it into a charity that addressed that. And the theater is a nonprofit. We knew that we wanted to go union. It's a union house. They're in their third year transition contract to off-Broadway. And we discussed it with them, and we budgeted the show at $150,000 for a 4-week run with, I think it was 3 weeks rehearsal in front, or a little bit more, and musicians and designers and blah blah blah. And basically,
that's a pretty tight budget.
It's very tight, but it's a minimal set, really minimal. We don't actually have a set. It's a table and chairs and ropes and doors, and that's it. Couple props, and it's all in the words, and it's all in the material. So so we committed, Mark and I, to raising the $150,000. We'd never done this before, and we did not have a plan B. And we just said we're going to do it. We never even set a date at which we were going to say we're not doing it. So we were able to, we set the plan and finalized it last fall. And then we just forged ahead. And before we even did a crowdfunder, because we didn't feel like saying, hey, we want to do this, you guys pay for it. Before we even did that, we approached private sources. We do know a lot of people, which is really good. And Mark was the librettist for Allegiance, the George Takei vehicle that was on Broadway 2 years ago. So through that, he met a lot of potential investors. He met a lot of very interesting people, dog walking in Central Park. That's how New York works, is you're rubbing shoulders with just people of all walks of life, and rubbing dogs as well. And people just make connections here. You know how it works. It's the smallest big city in the world. And we were able together to amass $90,000 before we even did a crowdfunder. Yeah, including grants from you know, a few of our relatives chipped in, but it was mainly outside sources. We got a grant from the Frederick Lowe Foundation, which does support new musicals, even though what we did is nothing like what Lerner and Lowe might have written. We got, I knew someone who ran a private foundation who was interested in only in projects that promoted social issues, and ours, of course, does. So we got an enormous grant from them, and then we just kept at it, and then we started a crowdfunder. And because both of us have been moving in these worlds for so long, we know a couple celebs, and so we pulled some favors, and we just wouldn't take no for an answer, and we just kept going and kept going. We had all this collateral for videos that we knew we were going to do. I recorded a band version of an instrumental pop edit of the opening number 3 years ago, because I knew that we were going to need it at some point, and we did. And then we made a video with our lead, and so a lot of it was about video collateral and just being unabashedly brave. And we actually did not raise the entire goal. We put up money ourselves to bridge the gap, which we are looking to replace with other money at some point, but it was worth it. And the cool part of how we raised all this money is that it was all tax deductible donations, because the cell is a 501c3. So we ran the campaign through them. Anyone who contributed $10 or $60,000 received a tax deduction for this. And in turn, that money goes to pay actors, actors, designers, musicians. And Mark and I waived our royalty participation as well as any fees for doing this. And so all the money goes on stage. Then in turn, all of the box office receipts go to Cyndi Lauper's True Colors Fund. There's no way we would have made back the budget anyway. But we wanted to make a statement with what we were doing. And this fund helps LGBTQ homeless youth who have been kicked out of their homes or can't go back to them because it's an unpleasant and hostile atmosphere. So it was completely in line with our mission. And the last part of the waterfall is Mark and I got to see our show.
Yeah.
So yes, it ended up costing us some personal skin, but oh my gosh, the rewards are, I mean, none of us are in this to get rich, right? So the reward was astounding, absolutely astounding. And I'm also happy to report that as of now, we're donating over $16,000 to the True Colors Fund.
Well, that's fantastic, Amy. Yeah. That's really incredible.
Yes, now, I'm hoping Cyndi will come next week.
Now, I'm sure the reward of having the show, getting to see it and getting these fantastic reviews and audiences really loving it is all worthwhile. Also, you set this as a limited run, so it is scheduled, according to Broadway World, to close on July 14th. Is there any possibility that it would run longer, or what are your plans for what's next?
Yes, when we scheduled it, we scheduled intentionally that it would open. The first preview would be on Flag Day, June 14th, and the last performance would be on Bastille Day, and that it would span July 4th because it is such an American. It's about such American ideals. We planned that. The humidity in New York notwithstanding. Oh my gosh. But we have added 3 shows. The 14th is a Friday. So we have, because we're now sold out, we have added 2 shows on the 15th and 1 on the 16th. Yes, we cannot extend. The expense of extending would be way too great. And that's okay.
That's okay. But you must be starting to think already about what your next steps would be. What do you think you want to have happen next for the show?
And obviously that means getting the right people to see it. And so far we're cautiously optimistic and are starting to have those conversations. So yeah, it's really exciting. And our goal, we were just discussing this morning, I think our goal is is to move to the definitive New York production of this, not necessarily Broadway.
But maybe just a slightly larger house and a bit
Yeah,
more values.
yeah. A larger house, a bigger profile place would be good. It's with this show, it's very interesting because the setting, the cell itself, is almost a character in it because it's an interesting space.
Mm-hmm.
And originally, when we were discussing the show, we were talking about a deconsecrated church or an unusual environment. But then you face the challenge of if you get the environment, you have to make it into a theater.
Yeah, so we got to bring in all the lights and the sound equipment and
Right.
yeah.
But if you get a theater, you have to turn it into the environment because it's a special feel, and we would really not want to lose the intimate nature of this show. I ideally see it in a 500-seat house, just because it is, well, first of all, it's a human story, and it's about, the fact that nobody is other because we are all other. And I think you need to be close to it to see that. And that's actually another thing I should mention, is that our casting is extremely non-traditional. And our lead, Evan Ruggiero, is an amputee. He only has he doesn't have his right leg below the knee. He lost it to bone cancer. And we also have someone in the cast who's legally blind. There's 9 people in the cast, and we were absolutely insistent that the cast look like America, which is 19% people with disabilities, very mixed races. It's a very classical theater approach. Classical theater's been doing this for years, the whole Joe Papp Shakespeare in the Park theory of casting, but it has nothing to do with the roles they're in. And in fact, we did not say this role is open for someone with a disability. This role should be played by an African-American actor. This role we would like an Asian-American actor. We were open to anyone who fit the bill for the character because it is a human story. So we have 2 African-American actors. We have an Asian actor. We have a Hispanic actor. Like I said, we have 2 people with disabilities. We have a senior citizen. The whole thing was engineered to be that way so that it's not written into the roles. We don't address the race or the specific physical attributes or abilities. We don't not acknowledge them. We use Evan's disability, but it's not the point in any way, shape, or form. And it's really, we had to have some interesting conversations, obviously, leading to this about non-traditional casting and about not colorblind, but color conscious casting. And as 2 white people, we realized that was a weird thing to be addressing. But it was very important to us that we do it. We also have gender parity in the band. We told the person who was wrangling the band, we want people of we want mixed races, and we want gender parity. And sometimes you have to dig a little deeper to approach this, but it's completely worth it because that's what the show's about, is opportunity and denied opportunities because of who you are, so we're thrilled with that. It was really very gratifying there have been disabled people who've seen the show who have said that they've found it very uplifting and inspiring. And one of my favorite Facebook posts was from our lead, Elena Wang, who was Lea Salonga's understudy in Allegiance, phenomenal performer, who wrote, "I'm thrilled to be in a show where I can just be full-on Chinese and not act like I'm white."
That's fantastic.
Which was
really, so kudos to you and your choices in how to fund it and how to approach every aspect of it. It's really exciting. I want to wrap up by asking you a question that we've been asking everybody we've been interviewing. It's a fantasy question. If you were to wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly you had $100 million at your disposal to use for new musicals in general, how would you want to spend that money?
Well, obviously, I'd do a production of Bastard Jones. How would I want to spend that money? after that production, it's always been a dream of mine to have a place somewhere in the mountains, perhaps, that I could create an artist retreat for other people to come and read.
Some kind of a retreat where you could invite artists to be working on shows, and they'd have time
Yes,
and
I was just stopping because of that noise. I didn't know what it was. Yeah.
You happened to be right close to Burbank Airport, so that was an airplane.
It was my money arriving. A special cargo plane and unmarked bills. Yeah, I've always thought that would be a really cool thing where people could come up and it would be completely free to them, and we'd buy all the groceries and have someone cook for them and give them studios and recording studios and maybe a little theater space to try things out on, and also, some recreational stuff, and you could go outside and look at the mountains if you didn't want to be working, or you could, seriously, that's always been a dream of mine, to do that for people. And
well, that sounds fantastic, Amy. I hope you get that $100 million, because I think that would be a real gift to the whole musical theater community, a really great opportunity. So
sounds good.
Congratulations.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me where it was, where the 100 million was.
Oh, no, sorry. No, you'll have to wait on that one. We'll get back to you.
Okay.
But thank you again, and congratulations again to you and to Mark and everybody else involved on your production of Bastard Jones. Wish you all the luck for the rest of your run, and we'll be watching to see what happens next. But thank you so much for today. Take care. Toodaloo.